There is a place, far out on the ocean, the sea is as blue as the loveliest cornflowers and as clear as glass. And you mustn't think no one's down there, no. There in the depths is where the mermaids live. And the little mermaid falls in love with the handsome prince. But he is up there in the castle and she is down here in the depths of the sea. So she goes to the ugly witch of the sea to exchange her beautiful voice for feet and legs and the chance to be with him. Rags to riches, but in the end all we have left of him, or anyone, are the stories written and the stories told. And why these stories? Why am I standing here with the stories he told? I had wiped Andersen from my memory almost entirely, and then about 18 months ago I was at the start of a new love affair, sitting in my kitchen, waiting for the phone to ring. Yes. And on the radio I heard a woman say how Andersen was in his 30s when he wrote his first major fairy tale. That he wrote The Little Mermaid while staying on an island to the east of Denmark, avoiding the wedding of the person he loved. I thought, that doesn't sound like a story that involves singing lobsters. So I picked a book down off my shelf and I opened it and I began to read, and as I read the stories I remembered where I'd first heard them. You know how that is, you open one memory and 1,000 more pour out. Candle lanterns reflecting the harbour ice, and the passenger can see through the frosted carriage window how every house is aglow as parlour by parlour is lit with the light of 100 candles on every freshly cut Christmas tree. Copenhagen is trembling tonight with the excitement of a royal ball. The carriage pulls up in front of a grand house, the horses jangle to a stop and puff steam into the air. Out steps the young man, unfolding his long gangling legs that are packed into an old suit that stops 2 inches above the ankle. Hans Christian slips and slides up the flagstone steps and pulls on the cord of the bell of the house of his patron. He has just enough time to wonder how he got here from where he began. A servant shows him into a grand room where beside the enormous Christmas tree sits his patron, Jonas Collin, who holds out a leathery palm and says, "Andersen, at last." And the grown-up said we spent so much time together, me and the boy, not me and the scissors, that he was a boyfriend and I was a girlfriend, that he was my first love, that we would get married. And we sat hand in hand in the corner of the classroom, and the teacher sat high up on her chair, and she opened the old book of fairy tales, and she read. There's an article I cut out of a magazine recently. It said you could tell in the first 60 seconds of an encounter how a whole relationship will be. Andersen waits for 60 seconds, 10 minutes, half an hour, staring at the unopened door. Edvard doesn't come. The moon was streaming through the window, and my first love was standing over me, masturbating. I pulled the sheets around my shoulders and I went into the lounge. I am pretty sure that's the moment I should have left the flat, but I couldn't. He said, "Oh, I couldn't help it, it's a guy thing." There were a couple of awkward dates after that, and then it turned to nothing. But no, he called me a couple of years later. He said, "I'm getting married." I think he was expecting me to be distraught. "Oh no, come back to me, please." "Congratulations," I said. "Yeah, well," he said, "she wants to have babies," and I thought, I'm in my 30s, I need to grow up. I got my ticket, my passport, my notebook, and I moved on. I thought if I travel far enough, I'll find what I'm looking for, my proper, real first love. We met in a smoky bar, and the first 60 seconds of our encounter went like this. He said, "What can I get you to drink?" I said, "I can get my own drink." Phone still hadn't rung. I made myself a cup of tea and I picked up an old pile of magazines which I flicked through while I waited for the kettle to boil. Went over a couple of articles. How do you know he's right? How much should you sacrifice for the one you love? How Hugh Grant's films are ruining our love lives. It was a survey saying that women who watch romantic films expect their lovers to know what they're thinking. I looked at the phone. I went back to my book of fairy tales. But you are in my blood, you're my holy wine, and you taste so bitter and so sweet. I could drink a case of you, darling. Still I'd be on my feet. There is a place. And once he starts writing, maybe you know how it is, he can't seem to stop and it all pours out. With the dagger in her hands, the Little Mermaid pulled aside the purple drapes of the tent and looked at the lovely bride resting with her head on the prince's breast. Then up at the sky where the red of dawn was growing stronger and stronger, and then at the prince, who in his sleep called out his bride's name. It was over. And that is what happens to every story.